Okay, so we will get started. And I know it's a Lutheran school because you're all sitting back there. We had to take the first chairs to put up here, and I said, don't worry, we can take the chairs because nobody's going to sit in the front row anyway. It just doesn't happen. Good to see all of you tonight. I hope you take advantage of eating that popcorn and enjoy it. I know some of you just came from practice. I hope you got some supper before you got here. I am thrilled to have these four guests with us today. I know all four of them, three of them professionally, and one of them I had the good fortune to have been in Rotary and on a committee with him. And he knows more about music and wine than I will forget in my lifetime. So it is always a delight to get to know folks who know different things than you do. So what I'm going to have them do is I'm going to actually have them introduce themselves and give us a 2-minute or less overview of how their major was applicable or not to what they are doing and have done. And shall we start with ladies first? Kristen?
Hello, I am Kristen Kreil, and currently I lead the North Dakota After School Network, a role that I've had for 6 whole months. But I graduated from Cornell College, and my college major, it was undecided until I was forced to choose to make a decision. And I looked at, what do I have the most classes in? Well, that should probably be my major. So I majored in sociology. I have a minor in psychology, and I actually have a certificate of Spanish from the Baden-Powell Institute in Morelia, Mexico. I have not retained any Spanish at all. But I went through lots of journeys in college. There was a time where I wanted to be a broadcast meteorologist. There was a time where I wanted to be a teacher. There was a time I wanted to be a lawyer. And I was actually pre-law all through all 4 years of school. I was one of the founding members of our pre-Alpha Delta law fraternity at my school. And then right before I graduated, I decided that law school was not for me. And how I got to where I am today is a very winding road. But really, once I decided I didn't want to go to law school, I moved home and applied for every single job that was open that I was even remotely interested in. And that is where this journey has come. It's been very winding, but I do think that, reflecting back, that majoring in sociology with also psychology in there is applicable, and I do actually reflect quite a bit on my schooling and how the classes I had really shaped and helped me shape my values and into what I'm looking for in my career.
Thank you. Sam? The only retired member of our panel. Try it again.
Hello?
There you go.
Wow. I'm Sam Y. I am retired about 3 years ago. I was American Crystal Sugar's treasurer. I spent 38 years there. My education was I had a degree in philosophy and finance. Finance was never something I wanted to pursue. I started out as a business major, and I very quickly became a philosophy major, and intending to go to graduate school and be a teacher, be a college level teacher, but circumstances and needing a job took me the path of a financial career. And as far as I think that one question was, do things that you study in college, are they applicable to your career? I would say very much so, a big yes. My philosophy degree helped me in terms of, first of all, writing, because you write term papers. In a term paper, what do? You provide evidence, and you try to defend your case. You try to defend your case by persuading others that you're correct, and you have the conclusion correct. And in the work world, everything you do is that. you're either selling to a customer, selling to your boss, selling to your suppliers, your business relations. That this is a good relationship to have, beneficial for both, and you're always persuading someone. So that kind of a term paper mentality is lifelong useful. As far as the finance education, the technical part, I never use my technical part except once in a long time, maybe once a week, sometimes even once a month. But during those times that I had to use them, without them I couldn't get through. And so it's not that you use it all the time, but you do use it enough that you cannot be without it. And I think that's a quick way of answering the question. I spent 38 years there, and I was very lucky that the company was large enough that it had very large transactions that attracted national, international interest. So as a finance person, I got to live in Moorhead and sort of had a Wall Street job. I went to Wall Street once or twice a year for the deals that we had, and I was fortunate that I had that opportunity living here. That's all I have for now.
Hello. My name is Michelle Sudell. I'm the IT manager for Cornerstone Bank. I've been there for a little over 11 years. My college is an interesting long 3-college story because I left my first time on academic probation. And then when I was in the middle of a crappy job and wasn't going anywhere, I decided to go back to school, and then I studied and I got a 4.0 and I screwed up the curve for everybody else. And then after getting established, I decided a tech degree probably wasn't enough, and so I went back to school to get a bachelor's degree. And my associate's is in computer and network technology, and so it does still apply for me. The experience that I had from school at a tech school was really good for that career, and then it's helped me to grow the department that I have now. The bachelor's degree was probably less applicable to my job because I had to take a lot of computer science classes, which don't apply too much, but my minor was in business management, and those classes and the learnings that I have from there, I would say that I use those pretty much every day.
Test? Okay. My name is Dustin Sobolik. I'm an investment officer at a local trust company here. I majored in political science and history, so pretty unrelated to my job. But I think Sam kind of alluded to it. There are certain aspects of a humanities degree that become very valuable, and having a bit of a political background has certainly helped in the past couple of years. So, making an argument, making a case, being able to communicate well, that's been very helpful in my job. And also being able to argue, whether it's with my boss or some colleagues, also has been very beneficial. Aside from that, I don't know if I have, a lot of my major that translated into my job. Most of what I did was self-taught. I took a bunch of what are called Series 7 or Series 65 or Series 63 style of exams, which allow you to basically transact in stocks and bonds and other sorts of securities for folks. So I was self-taught. Then I ended up working for a broker-dealer, which basically meant I made probably 30 to 50 phone calls a day for about a year and a half or so. Set a bunch of meetings, try and set sales goals, and then get people's business, invest their money. There's some other ethical implications I think we'll get into later with that aspect.
Great.
And following that, I worked at a registered investment advisor, which is a little different. We'll get into that later. Worked there for a couple of years, and then I landed at a trust company, and I've been very, very fortunate with who I work for, the clients I work with. We'll get into more later.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about values for a minute. Each of you, I know you well enough to know that you have personal values that you hold very dear and are important to you. How have those aligned or not aligned at different times with the organizations you've worked with? And you'll notice I won't ever call on Michelle first because she likes to think about things, but I will call on Sam because he's the retired guy on this one.
Question is personal alignment with, as far as personal ethics with organization's position. Well, I think as a professional, there's a fine line that what do you bring to the job in terms of your personal bias, whether you call them your personal standard or ethics. The thing is, when you are hired, you have entered into a contract to do a certain job. That job requires a range of things that you have to comply with, including the job, the organization that has contracted with you. Whether you actually sign one or not, I think there's an implicit contract that you perform that. And when you perform that contractual duty, at what point would that performance stretch you to the point that you think is against your personal position? And I think you have to decide on your own. First of all, there is the legal side. You of course cannot do things that are not legal. Not only that you cannot do them, I hope that you can find a way to be a whistleblower. Many companies have a process by which you can report such a thing. And where I worked, there was a third party that would take a call from you when you run into something like that. But let's say it's not that. It's not illegal, but it's something that you cannot live with, or you question about. I think you have to decide yourself. You have a contractual obligation to perform your job. And if that involves something that your personal bias says that you cannot do it, then I think the right thing to do is to disclose that. Maybe somebody else can do that and not you. Or worse, if the conflict is strong enough, maybe you should resign. I think it would be disingenuous for you to continue, and it's against your personal belief, but you're doing a halfway job for your company, for your organization that you have contracted to do and you have promised to do. And there are things that may not be all that unusual. Maybe your standard is in such a way that you just can't do it, and there are thousands of people that would. And so I'm not making a judgment about your personal position. I'm just saying that whatever that is, if you cannot go forward with it genuinely and comfortably, and you probably don't belong there. And I think it's as simple as that. If they ask you to do something that you find it despicable, unethical, even though it's legal, then you have to disclose, or at worst, resign.
Kristen?
I didn't really explore my personal values and think much about how they affected how I show up at work until probably the last few years. But once I looked at that, I realized that my personal values have really always been there. And I can look back at my work history and see positions that I had at companies that I really struggled at because I was not a right fit for the job, because I had disagreements about some policies. And reflecting back, I can see, well, no wonder I struggled so much at that position. That was not a company that aligned with my values. And I've been in a position recently where I did leave an organization, not because they were doing anything, illegal or overtly unethical, but it really became apparent that my values were no longer aligned with the organization. So I had the opportunity then to do what I call some career soul searching, where I really found what are my values and what kind of organization do I want to be a part of. I wasn't necessarily looking at job duties, and it was a really It wasn't an easy process, I will say, but it was a really beautiful process, beautiful conclusion, because when you lead with your personal values, I mean, amazing things that you never even thought were possible come to you. And I wish that I would have explored what my personal values were more intentionally much earlier in my career.
Michelle, can I skip to you next?
So Leanne would describe me as black and white. I think she just did about 5 minutes ago, and I am very black and white. My integrity to myself is probably the highest thing that I live by. And if somebody violates that, there is a problem in that relationship, probably forever. Not very easy for me to get over something if you violated me personally. So I also believe in giving people opportunities and growing people from within companies. On my career path, my first position, they wouldn't promote me to what my degree was in. And so that didn't align with me, so I went and looked somewhere else that would give me that opportunity. And when I was in that position, it was a job that I thought I would be at forever. The people I worked for were amazing. The company was amazing. The owner would come into an all-staff meeting with 500 people, and he would call you by your name all the way around the room, and even nicknames for some people. And it felt like kind of a family. And then he sold it, and then the company didn't align anymore with me, and I again found another position. Where I'm at now, sometimes a company's stated values are very easy to interpret in different ways and can be used as weapons instead of tools to help people do a good job and do the right thing. And sometimes that's where I have some issues. And in your career, when you get to certain levels of employment, it's harder to find something else. And so talking to Kristen today about her journey after she left her position was, going and being a delivery person for Country Greenery and doing this stuff. And I've been talking about that lately with my husband about, well, I could go work for Starbucks for a couple weeks and make coffee. I did that in college. It would be so much fun. And then I could just quit and go to a different job, and I wouldn't have to deal with some of the stuff that you deal with on a daily basis. But every day, it's a choice to put up with stuff that you don't like. And again, kind of Sam's levels of how much it takes out of you, and you have to make those choices. So I go to work every day, and I enjoy the heck out of the team that I've built and the people around me that I do share a lot of values with, and that brings me a lot of joy at my job.
Sure. And then we'll jump to Dustin.
When I said if it doesn't align with your own value, you resign, I sounded very black and white, and I didn't mean it that way at all. Because, at least for me, your own value, first of all, evolves. When you have to encounter a situation that you have to make a choice, you reevaluate. To me, it's not black and white, because to me the world isn't, and that there are gradation, and if you can accept it, then you may find yourself, okay, I can do that, but once to this point I can't. Or you may actually discover that you were wrong. You were too inflexible. You were just messed up before. And so you can learn from these processes. You don't go into it thinking that you have a rock-solid ethical position that will guide you for the rest of your life. Maybe you do, or maybe you don't. And when I said you resign, I didn't mean it in that black and white. Now, when it comes to the point that you can't go forward, then perhaps you should resign, because the principal value is that you have made a contract to do somebody's work for somebody. and they are paying you to do that. If you cannot do that, then you need to leave for whatever reason.
That's a nice segue, Dustin. There it is.
Test? Okay. So I think everyone's kind of talked about, I guess, well, not so much Sam, but past jobs. And I think I'm going to do the same, to be honest, because the company I work for now, I feel very good about morally, ethically. When I started out, though, so like I said, I made like 30 to 50 sales calls a day. I was totally commission driven, so every Monday morning we would go in at 7:30. It would say, okay, how many phone calls did you make? How much money did you make? And that was posted up in front of everybody. In the time span of a couple hours, you could make a few $1,000s. The route there was sometimes rocky, sometimes misleading for the clients or, I guess, customers even. So it required a certain level of, I think, moral flexibility or moral ambiguity would be a good way to describe it. So you're not necessarily having people make bad financial decisions, but you're helping them make financial decisions that you know you could do better in a different circumstance, in a different environment. The culture was very, very sales driven. If I did not sell something, I didn't really get to eat the next month. And then once you get that kind of snowballed, you really start enjoying this compensation. But eventually I got to the point where I could not sleep at night. So about a year and a half in, I said, you know what, try to not use like an expletive here. I just quit. I went to a different style of business, so that was not commission-driven, that was fee-driven, where you became a fiduciary, where you were legally required to act in someone's best interest, and people would think, oh, well, you're a financial advisor, you must legally be required to act in someone's best interest. And that's not the case. So, not that I want you to like go off and tell your parents, like, you go reevaluate your financial advisor, although it might not be a bad idea. That's not a sales pitch, I promise. So eventually, I quit, got into a different environment. I wouldn't call it necessarily toxic, but it was like the halfway evolution point, and then eventually I got to where I am now, where we sit around and we talk about ethics pretty frequently. I was having a conversation about dementia earlier today, and we have a client who is now forgetting things, and I had a meeting with her, I don't know, 4 weeks ago, had her come in a week later, and I could have taken all of her accounts, moved them, made the company a bunch of money, but I would have felt terrible about it. So now we have to get an attorney involved, and it's going to be all sorts of fun. But I think that's how in summation, that's what I would go with. I'm not saying resign, but if it becomes so morally toxic or ethically toxic, argue about it, wrestle about it, I don't know, write about it even, organize your thoughts, and then decide maybe it is worthwhile.
So they've touched a little bit on ethical choices, but I think it would be interesting for the three folks up here if you wanted to ask Sam a question. And Sam said he was okay with this, so I thought it might be an interesting opportunity for a question or two from the panelists to Sam.
With your position in finance, did you feel extra pressure to be ethical, or did you feel, was it internal pressure or external pressure? What was that experience like?
In the position, the treasurer position is primarily, one characteristic is that you deal with cash. You deal with incoming cash and outgoing cash, and you deal with financial transactions that are very large. In my career, I put my signature on things that are in I think the top one would be probably $400 million, one deal. And my largest check that I signed and handled, probably over 80 million. I was there for almost 40 years, so the legal vault, the entire legal vault, probably 80% of the stuff had my name on it. as a signatory because as an officer you sign for the company. So dollar value is a pressure, but you get desensitized. We spoke at the company, we round to $100,000, so we spoke 4.5 million as the sort of the unit. The discussion is basically a tenth of a million. But none of that really is so much a added pressure, because whatever decision you make for the company, ultimately there is a monetary value, and it doesn't need to be in my job to have a fiduciary responsibility to protect the value of the company or the assets of the company. So if you're in the factory, you misuse a certain, turn the dial in such a way that you waste a tank of this or that, or fouled up something, your responsibility is as much as anybody's. And I think even though the dollar value makes it apparently more scarier, but it really isn't, over time you just have become quite used to it. But as they say, you follow the money. Money is a motivator for a lot of people, and it attracts misbehavior, so to speak. And you have to have processes that you don't tempt people. That's why you have procedures that are so well established that no one person can easily benefit himself or herself by committing a white-collar crime. You have processes that are so pretty airtight that you do not tempt people. It's not fair to them, and that's not our job. Our job is not to trap a thief. Our job is to get things done, and so processes are designed to protect everybody. I don't know if I answer that.
So you kind of led into what I was thinking. That within your teams over the years, were there people that did try that, and how did you find out, and what was done in those situations?
I just have a memory of two. One very, very large, well, not huge, but close to $500,000, and one $600. and it was pre-Enron, so people that discover that when someone is in a high position, potentially the infraction was sourced in. In the pre-Enron days, it's very hard for them to basically blow the whistle and try to get to the bottom of it. And I think as much as you may criticize regulations and clumsiness of processes, it's a good thing that when people run into a case like that, they have a place to go, rather than feeling that they are stuck and they're going to be in trouble. They should not be the ones in trouble when they discover something like that. The perpetrator should be in trouble. So I would say that smart companies have processes so you can encourage people to come forward with these things rather than to help bury it. And I won't go into my situation, but in the pre-Enron days, it was very difficult.
I have another easy one for Sam.
Oh, okay.
So a few years back, there was a strike at Crystal Sugar. And I don't know if you were part of the decision-making process or not, but how do you balance the health of the business versus kind of the needs of the employees or the needs of the union?
Very lucky that I was not at all involved in that. I was not in human resources. I was not on the negotiation team. My only job as treasurer that touched upon that was I was the face of the company to the financial community, people that basically provided American Crystal either insurance or financing. Both of those are based on trust. as an officer trying to represent a company, to have a positive face of the company, you are allowed to be positive and be informational, but you should not tell a lie. And so, what is your job when you are in a situation the company is under stress and you have to provide a positive message, but you don't lie? And I think, interestingly, you might think that lenders find out about your company by deep research. Actually, they don't. They do some research. They assign it to a rather low-level person. And actually, most lenders find out about the company by their contacts, like the treasurer and the financial team. And so I become the chief person to explain what's going on. And I think you can be positive and at the same time be truthful and let them come to a conclusion. And this is a large company that we have survived 100 years. This is not the first strike. And the strike took 2 years, but it came together, and all the raw material were processed. And it's a very painful process. Nobody won. Everybody suffered, and is completely unfortunate. And a solution could have been found by two sides meeting, but they, for whatever reason, didn't meet. As far as finding a solution, they missed each other. And my job was to tell the story that, hey, it's not done yet, but we'll survive it. And you find nuances that would give you a very good argument that would survive, and the company did survive. But let's say if it got to the point that I could not do that anymore. I could not have a positive face. And then you have to examine, as many of us have already said, you look at yourself in the mirror. Tomorrow, I'm going to have to say this or that, and can I do that? Is it in violation of my own standard? I think you have to ask that question. Before we came here, we just said we had dinner, and I made the point that even the law is not black and white. You don't drive the speed limit. You go, 7 miles, 10 miles even, and when the street has stripes, cars don't stop, even though there's a person on the curb, you're supposed to stop. But even the law has some leeway. You're supposed to have all the documentation in your tax return, but American Crystal stops at $75. If it's less than $75, if you don't have a full receipt, we let it pass. And so there are decisions you make that are not necessarily black and white, but when you come to the point that you absolutely cannot do it, and that's the point that you have to tell yourself, hey, we have talked about this, and we have internally mulled this over, and I'm done now. I can't go forward. And I think that's a worthwhile thing for you to know where that point is. At some point you'll discover. And all of you had that chance in your career, I'm afraid.
Okay. Oh, Faith has a question.
Do you mind if I follow up? I promise it's not going to be a hard question. So today in class we were learning about influence, that leadership is about influence and leaders have to influence. And I'm wondering what influence strategies were you using when you were having to do this whole positive face of the company with these external stakeholders so that you could be both truthful but persuasive?
You do that by having a long-term reputation of being of high integrity. You earn the trust of people. I had a situation that we had a huge disagreement with an insurance company, thinking that our claim that we applied for into the tune of maybe a couple of $1 million, million and a half plus. And the insurance company thought that we didn't do it right, and we were trying to claim more than we should, and we weren't. And so they sent the highest ranking adjuster to American Crystal. And I'm not patting myself on the back. And before this person left the Chicago office to come to American Crystal in Moorhead, his boss happens to know me over the long time. And Randy, before he left the office in Chicago, his boss Dennis said, when you get to Moorhead, you talk to Sam. Whatever he tells you, it will be correct. It will be the truth. So just talk with him. Now, I learned that later, that that was the instruction the adjuster came to Moorhead with. And I didn't get there but through a very long term of earning their trust, that and I negotiate. I don't throw things around just for the heck of benefiting my position. It would be based on facts and based on the truth. So I think your reputation is, interestingly, in this your age, you probably do a lot of things online. You don't necessarily meet with people. You have online contacts and meetings. In the financial world, at the level that we deal with, you still have people meet people for lunch. You meet people for dinner. You go to New York for once a year for your rating. They would never accept a virtual meeting. You go there and meet. The reason is the fact that face-to-face is still indispensable because they learn about you. My contacts over the years, I know their kids' name. I know where they go to college. They know my kids and my wife and my what they major in, what they are doing. And over time, you learn about people as people, and you develop trust. And that's how you do it.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to divide into 4 groups. And because the classes seem to be sitting next to each other, I'm going to be obnoxious, and I'm going to make you count off into 4s. So we mix the classes up a little bit. So, Avery, would you start? We're going to come back together, so please finish your thoughts. So you can stay where you are. Go ahead. They're not done yet. Okay, so I thought it would be a nice wrap-up if each of the panelists would just take a minute or a minute and a half to give one last comment that you would like the students to keep in mind. So what's one thing you want them to take away from this evening's conversation? One thing you'd like to take the panelist, or one thing you panelists want the students to take away. And Dustin, how would you like to start? And if you'd stand over there so the camera guy his camera is right there, but then everybody can also see you. Is that okay, Wayne, if he stands over there? Awesome.
Did you just record me pointing at the camera? Cool.
Don't go in the corner. Come.
Oh, I thought I was supposed to be in the corner.
Right about there, so he's got the camera.
I thought it was like a rotation.
Well, I'm just kind of saying, I didn't want him to his back.
I don't know
to
what my
everybody.
good side is here.
Over there.
You just told me to.
Not in the corner. Kind of there.
Here.
Thank
Okay.
You.
Thank you.
Allie's got it. She nailed it.
Terrible
Good.
sense of direction here. Now, could you repeat the question, please? I'm looking at.
Once it's right, it will be fine. Now turn, facing the group. Keep going. Stop. There.
Oh, this is wonderful.
Yeah, there you are. So, what's one thing you'd like the people around you to remember from this evening that you think is really important for them to take with them?
It's totally okay to argue with your superiors or your peers about any sort of ethical issue. Bring it up. Don't be scared. People will respect you more for it. And if they don't agree with it and it's really immoral, you should probably say, you know what, it's best that I just leave. And unemployment's really low right now, so you probably have that option.
Ever practical. Thank you, Dustin. Michelle, would you like to go next? Right there. Yeah,
Like this?
just like that.
Okay.
Perfect.
My number one thing would be stay in school. Or go back to school, or go back to school, but do school. My number two thing would be to definitely stand up for yourself in any situation, because in the end, you're the only one that you have to be responsible to is yourself. And there's a lot of pressures in the workplace. There's a lot of pressures probably that you're dealing with school. If you let those pressures dictate your decisions, you're more likely to regret them later. If you listen to yourself and where you want to go and what you believe in, then you're more likely to do the things that are right for you and for your future that you won't regret.
Thank you. Kristen?
The one piece that I would say is think about your values and be able to talk about your values, or at least give them a name. Because when you make decisions with your values, it can make those maybe tougher decisions a lot easier. Knowing that you stuck with what's important to you and what you find important, or what your values are. It makes ethical decisions a lot easier because you will face them. We all do.
Sam?
Don't shy away for taking liberal arts courses. It will enrich you and make you a better writer and a better thinker. Second is that maybe this sounds like a diversion from what has been said. You should have your position, but you may be wrong. And always examine your own beliefs and be willing to have a continuous process of self-examination. As firm as you may think you are, you may still be wrong. And learn from other people. Learn all the time. Learn continuously.
Okay. With that, I think the evening is wrapped. Let's say thank you to our panelists.
I should say that tomorrow's break, right? And this is almost 9 o'clock, and that's quite amazing that you're here.
So we appreciate that, and we want you all to have a good break, and with luck, you don't have any exams tomorrow, and if you do, you will do well. So enjoy your break. Thank you.